Well, I don't think this is just his instinct. I've been all over the country lately and talked to a lot of people out there. This Save America Act, it's not just him thinking about it. Millions of Republicans across the country are worried about it. They're asking about it. They're asking their members of Congress about it. You talk to a member of Congress, they'll tell you the number of calls they're getting on it. I'm sure he's hearing about it. So I think, I'll just play devil's advocate on the strategy piece. I'm not arguing the housing bill is bad. In fact, it might be good to campaign on. But you could see a world where if Republicans who love President Trump perceive that he was giving up on this thing that they actually really care about, that would be politically depressive to them heading into a midterm where, off-year turnout is already an issue for Republicans.
So there you have Scott Jennings on CNN talking about the Save America Act. And this is a very important bill that the White House just posted within the last 24 hours. Save America. And they said all voters must show ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship. No mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. No men and women's sports. No transgender mutilation surgery on our children. That's what the White House says we need to do to save America. Let's get Hans von Spakovsky on with us right now. Advancing American Freedom Senior Legal Fellow, former FEC Commissioner and DOJ lawyer, on Twitter at @von Spakovsky. Hans, welcome back. Good to have you with us.
Well, thanks. I got to say, I agree with all that.
Yeah, it's hard if you've, been along the conservative movement or the constitutional movement for a while to look at those things and not be like, well, those really seem like common sense. And you've heard Scott Jennings on CNN saying he's traveled the country. These are very popular positions all wrapped up in one. Can you just talk to us a little bit, Hans, right now about yesterday? The president said, I'm not going to sign this housing bill, a bill that they got through the House, they got through the Senate. All it needs is his signature. Right. He set it aside and said, I want all eyes and all attention on the Save America Act. How important is the Save America Act to actually save America?
Oh, I think it's very important. Look, federal law already requires you to have to prove your ID and prove you're a citizen to get a job. And voting, I mean, some people probably think getting a job, being able to support their families is more important than voting. I think they're both very important. And the idea that we have big states like New York, California, where not only do they not have any ID requirement, but they have all these procedures in place that make it easy, and they encourage people who are not citizens to register and vote, ought to concern every American. Only citizens ought to be registering and voting. And anyone who opposes that clearly wants aliens to be able to cheat by being able to participate in our elections.
How do you feel, as somebody who has studied elections, you served as an FEC commissioner, how do you feel about the way the left, at least in the last, definitely into the 2020 election, but before that, how the left has kind of accessorized populations, communities that may need a little extra help? They've appropriated them to their cause, and then they use those people as a way to transform the entire way that we vote. And we know that there is fraud that occurs to some extent. I don't know that we know the extent of which it has actually occurred. I'd like to know the answer to that question. But there is it seems as though what's being positioned to the American people by the left and what they're using, the mileage they're trying to get out of that to change the way our elections happen, there seems to be a little bit of an imbalance there.
Oh, there's a huge imbalance. And look, their attitude actually shows a patronizing contempt for the American people. I mean, they think we're too stupid to be able to, for example, show an ID to vote when probably upwards of 95% of people already have an ID, a driver's license, and it's very easy if you don't to get a photo ID. They also think we're so stupid that we can't provide proof that we're citizens, even though we do that all the time to work across the country. There's even, listen, they talk about the poor not being able to do this. Almost all federal social welfare programs require you to be what? A U.S. citizen to receive benefits. So what that means is that you have to prove you're a citizen if you're applying for welfare. They just ignore all of that when they come out against these kind of common sense requirements that Americans overwhelmingly support.
Can I ask you, before we go over to the Supreme Court rulings, because there's a few big ones that
Right.
came out today, the portion of this Save America Act that has to do with mail-in ballots, because the president, or the White House at least, when they posted this on X in the last day, their number 3.5 is no mail-in ballots. And then it says, except for illness, disability, military, or travel. So it seems to me like the White House is saying there's a time and a place for you to need to mail in your ballot, but it shouldn't be the basis rule. Talk to me about the peril that exists in places who have the willy-nilly mail-in ballots as kind of like this is the main way you vote.
Right. Look, that used to be the rule in every state across the country. You could only use an absentee ballot if there was some reason you weren't going to be at a polling place. Almost all that has gone away, particularly the part about being out of town on election day, because we have early voting and open election places all over the country. Most of Europe doesn't allow absentee ballots. Why? Because they know how easy it is to commit fraud using absentee ballots, particularly in states, again, like California, where there's no ID requirement of any kind, whether you're voting in person or whether you're voting by mail. And so the use of absentee ballots ought to be strictly limited only to people who absolutely cannot otherwise vote.
All right, let's switch over to the Supreme Court rulings today. There are three that are getting major attention, two on the immigration and one on gun rights. Just walk us through your reaction to today's rulings. My understanding is that were they all 6-3? All of these individuals 6-3, three liberal justices ruling in the negative?
Yep, they were. And let me tell you, it was a great day at the Supreme Court. I mean, they came out and protected the Second Amendment rights of Americans by knocking out a law in Hawaii that pretty much banned concealed carry permit holders everywhere in the state, on all of the islands. They knocked that out as a violation of the Second Amendment and the 14th Amendment. They had two immigration cases, both of which, by the way, were very simple, should be common sense. One, they upheld the right of the president to end temporary protected status for Haitians and Syrians. That also applies to others. And they basically applied the federal law that says there shall be no judicial review of a determination by the Secretary of Homeland Security to either grant TPS or end it. And yet you had the three liberals trying to get around that and say, oh, that doesn't really mean what it says.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, how does that transform? Does it allow the administration to put their pedal to the metal a little bit? Because I keep hearing President Trump's like, the border crossings are zero. He goes, I don't even think these numbers are correct. How can that even be possible? There should be one. But what is that? How does that affect what this administration is doing, can do, or might do in the future now that we have that particular ruling?
Well, it means that, remember, this case was about Haitians and Syrians, but the president has ended TPS for many different aliens from many different countries, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, Somalians, and this means full speed ahead for those people having to leave the country, and if they don't, then they can be picked up by DHS, put on a plane, and transported back to their home countries. The second case also, just common sense.
Yeah.
You can't claim asylum as an alien until you arrive in the United States. That's the exact language, arrive in the United States. Well, back in 2016, so many aliens were coming in at ports of entry that border agents were being overwhelmed. So they put in a system that would only allow a certain number of aliens to come in every day, be processed where they could claim asylum, and the rest of the aliens And they kept on the other side of the Mexican border. They
Yeah.
didn't cross the line. They didn't step into the U.S. Well, those aliens sued saying, oh, well, we should be able to claim asylum. And what the Supreme Court said today is arrive in the United States means exactly what it says. Arrive in the United States. And if you never got here, if you never crossed the line, you can't claim asylum. And once again, what happened? The three liberals said, oh, you guys are fixated on the word in, arrive in. And that doesn't matter. Folks who just get even close to the border, yeah, they have the ability to claim asylum, which is just a ridiculous claim and is totally illogical.
Hans, before I let you go, I just want you to just kind of boil down for us what this president has been able to do to secure our border and
Right.
to enforce border control and illegal immigration control. As the administrator, as the executive, all we heard from Joe Biden is, my hands are tied. Legislature, we need some legislation here. Congress has to act. And until then, there's nothing I can do. How much of what the Trump administration has done to get the border under control and to get illegal immigration under control, how much of that has been through enforcing the laws already on the books or executive action?
It's been enforcing the law already on the books. And the difference you can show by just one overwhelming fact. When Biden was president, he said, we can't secure the border. And literally tens of thousands of aliens were coming across the southern border every day, every month. The number of aliens crossing over the border has been reduced by upwards of 98%. 98%. They virtually have stopped it across the 2,500-mile border that we have with Mexico. That is an unbelievable achievement, and it tells you the difference really between a president who's willing to enforce the law and a president who wasn't.